Issues of the day into clear focus through the lens of a Judeo-Christian worldview. And now, here is your host, Brannon Howse.
And welcome to the broadcast on this Thursday night, January 29th, 2026. We're going to be joined by Matt Tardio, former Special Forces, along with Dr. Basima Williams. Matt Tardio, I want to talk with him about what appears to be coming imminent strike by President Trump on Iran. Lots of hardware and military equipment moved into the region. We'll see what he says about that, what he thinks it will take to bring down this regime. I also want to ask him, as someone who, as a former Special Forces guy, has been trained on when and how to use lethal force, I want him to go through great detail as to what went down in Minneapolis-St. Paul when it comes to Alex Pretty. A lot of people on the right, the middle, the left, they're, well, like me, people that have never been in a life or death situation as a law enforcement officer or federal agent. What is it that's going on physiologically, psychologically, when they're in that kind of situation? We'll go through it tonight to look at the hard facts, not emotion, not speculation, but the hard facts, because the video provides a lot of hard facts. And of course, then there's the issue of, did he have a right to have a gun? Yeah, but was it the smart thing to do? If you know you're going to be engaging federal agents, which apparently now we know from the video from January 13th that he, well, had a history of engaging these guys. Did they perhaps have a picture of him? Did they have a bulletin out for him, an arrest for him? Did they know who he was on the second encounter? But then again, we have the issue of gun being shouted, and then a gun supposedly misfires. All of this has to be put through the lens of people who have been there. And if you've never been there, and I haven't, then, well, we should probably talk to someone that has and that has been trained. We may not like it, and I don't like the loss of life that occurred, but what's the legality here? What about the training or lack thereof? I want to get all of that into our conversation tonight with Matt Tardio. And then, of course, as I said, what appears to be an imminent strike on Iran. Matt Tardio coming up. I also want to talk to Dr. Basima Williams tonight about metals in our food. We talked last night about, well, what the First Lady of Florida reported to us, and that's arsenic in some of the most highly consumed candies in America. Even my favorite Tootsie Rolls, which have now been thrown away, and I won't be eating those anymore. How do you get arsenic in candy? And you might be shocked to find out Dr. Basima Williams talks about it with me tonight, because I had a little pre-interview with her, which I don't normally do, but I wanted to talk to her about where we were going tonight and give her a heads up that I wanted to talk about arsenic in candy. And she said, well, you know, you can get arsenic out of other foods too. I'm like, what? Yeah, we'll get into it tonight. How is it this happens? And what do we need to do to protect our body? And does our body flush most of this out? And at what point do we have an imbalance that it is too much to be flushed out? What are some things we can do? Maybe like I'm going to ask her about glutathione. Is this a good way to detox ourselves and flush out heavy metals? We'll talk to her about that as well. And then Aaron, our reporter on the ground in Israel, takes us on a brand new tour of another biblical site in the land of Israel. Our reporter on the ground, Aharon Levarko. Tweet, text, email, Facebook, Getter, True Social. Let all your family and friends know we are here. Today on my radio show, I would invite you to go back on my radio show today and listen if you have a chance, because I talked today about the weaponization of immigration. The weaponization of immigration. I'm not going to do it all here again for you tonight, but I would like to just tell you some of the highlights. The weaponization of immigration. You know, this is also about collapsing our economy, I think. That's the Cloward-Piven strategy. Cloward-Piven. That's a husband and wife that I've talked about for years that were teaching at Columbia University. Men Mr. Piven, or Cloward, he died in, I think, 2001. Yep, 2001. Cloward died in 2001. Frances Fox Piven, she was born in 1932. She's still alive. What that make her, about 94 years of age? Well, those folks wrote about how to overwhelm a system and collapse a city like New York City by swelling the welfare rolls. And when you bring in a bunch of illegal immigrants and you start giving them free housing and healthcare and education, and then you add in the crime and the courts and the police and all that goes in with that, that is a great strain. Trillions of dollars on an American economy. And if you're for collapsing the system in America so you can nationalize things or implement more socialism, well, you can use immigration as a weapon. Interesting that Minnesota seems to be the flashpoint at so many levels for this attempted revolution in America. George Floyd, and now the Alex Freddie incident. A lady that was shot when she accelerated her car toward an ICE agent. And we can argue all sides of that. But don't you find it interesting that this is occurring in Minnesota? Well, I asked Yahoo's chat today. What do you call it? Their AI. I asked their AI today. I just put in Minnesota's long history of communism, just to see what it would say. Remember, this is Yahoo's AI. I didn't go over to some conservative, right-wing website to ask that. I just went to Yahoo. Minnesota, their long history of communism. And look what it threw up there for me. This might come as news to a lot of you. Look at this. You want to zoom in on that or zoom out on that? That'd be great. Look at this. Kerry Nygaard, elected in 1932. He became the first communist mayor in the United States. Where? Crosby, Minnesota. Crosby, Minnesota. The first communist mayor ever elected in the United States comes from Minnesota. And then, of course, you have the DFL, the Democrat Farm Labor Party, which is really the Democrat Party merging with a Marxist group. Even Yahoo's AI says the split of the American Socialist Party in 1913 led to the formation of distinct factions, with many Scandinavian socialists in Minnesota aligning with the communists. Marxist ideas have shaped various political movements in Minnesota, contributing to a unique political identity that persists today. Did you know the first ever elected mayor in the United States of America came from Crosby, Minnesota? Let's also not forget about Gus Hall. Gus Hall, the communist-aligned presidential candidate, Gus Hall, from the 1970s and 80s, from Minnesota. Isn't this interesting that this is occurring there? Now, I mentioned today on radio and TV at 1 o'clock, the weaponization of immigration for the collapse of the American economy. But you also have it for the purpose of trying to add in more voters and have a one-party system. Then you have the issue of globalism, destroying borders, rendering borders useless. And of course, I think this conflict, as I've been saying for some time, will be used to finally get people to say, "Uncle, tired of this." And everybody agrees to go to a digital ID so we can figure out who's here. And Rand Paul's saying, maybe we let the folks that have been here 20 years that came here illegally, but they don't have a record beyond that, and they've got jobs and they're paying taxes. Maybe we don't ever let them become citizens, but we let them stay. But they don't ever get to become citizens. They can't be involved in welfare and voting. Well, how do you know that? You give them a digital ID, so when they go to swipe their card to try to vote, it won't let them. Or get on social services, it won't let them. And then, of course, we have a financial crisis, a dollar crisis, a collapse. We go now to the Genius Act and all of these bills that have already been passed to set up digital IDs. And right away, as we said the other night, you can go to a bail in, not a bailout. You got $100,000 in the bank is going to get 20,000 of that. You're going to get 80, but only if you have a digital ID. Surrender to the digital ID will give you 80,000 of your 100. How many people do you think would sign up for a digital ID if their life savings was at risk? Yeah, you can use immigration as a weapon for collapse of an economy, for more voters, for the push of globalization and the erasing of borders. You can use it to push digital ID, and you can use it for a cultural shift to change the culture of America. As Michael Savage says, you're now dealing with language, borders, culture. The end of the Judeo-Christian history and heritage of America. Weaponization of immigration. I played for you guys when it came out, which I think was probably back in, what was it, 2000, I think this was 2010. 2010. This is Alicio Medina, head of the SEI. Here, listen to what he was saying back in 2010 on why they want to get 12 million of these illegals registered to vote. Listen to this.
To win, the progressive community needs to solidly be on the side of immigrants. That will solidify and expand the progressive coalition for the future. And let me tell you, when you are in the middle of a fight for your life, you will remember who was there with you. And immigrants count on progressives to be able to do that. Number two, we reformed the immigration laws. It puts 12 million people on the path to citizenship and eventually voters. Can you imagine if we have even the same ratio, 2 out of 3, if we have 8 million new voters that care about our issues and will be voting, we will create a governing coalition for the long term.
Yeah, that's right. A Marxist governing coalition, more than likely, right? And now we talked about in the Worldview Report tonight, trying to get the SAVE Act passed, which would require documentation that you're a U.S. citizen before you could vote. Why would anyone be against that? Why are the Democrats opposed to that? Because this is the weaponization of immigration. You just heard it. If we can get 12 million, maybe 20 million registered to vote of illegals, we can win and create a progressive coalition. This is a real problem. How many of you know that maybe Minnesota was also chosen because the first Antifa group started in Minnesota? How many of you knew the first Antifa group started in America, reportedly started in Minnesota in 1987? Here's a newspaper clipping from KFAI, which I guess is 90.3 FM in the Twin Cities. This is on their website. I went researching it today. KFAI.org. Miniculture in depth, fighting back, the rise of anti-racist action in Minneapolis. In the days after Minneapolis police killed George Floyd, youth-led protests in the city helped spark rebellions around the globe. The police, military, and white supremacist groups all responded. President Trump blamed the protest on Antifa and called for participants to be labeled terrorist. Anti-racist action, or ARA, started in Minneapolis and is a predecessor to the crews often now called Antifa. Started in 1987 with a multiracial group of teenage skinheads who fought the rising white power movement. It grew into a network of groups in at least 120 towns and cities across the U.S. and Canada. ARA's first principle was, we go where they go. Never let the Nazis have the streets. They eventually applied that not only to white power organizing, but to homophobic and anti-abortion organizing and to police violence, which they saw as all connected. Through the vivid first-person accounts, archival audio and music from the era fighting back the rise of anti-racist action in Minneapolis. It starts under the railroad tracks in uptown Minneapolis. It traces a movement that continues to shape the U.S. to this day. Huh. How many of you knew? How many of you knew that the forerunner to Antifa in America reportedly started in Minnesota in 1987? How many of you knew that the first ever elected communist mayor in America came from Crosby, Minnesota? No wonder the communists have picked the Twin Cities, Minneapolis, St. Paul, for their revolution. They've been watering the seeds of revolution, communist revolution there for decades upon decades. Very interesting history tonight, is it not? Well, folks, as we begin tonight, we're going to go to Matt Tardio. But before we do, remember, we're brought to you by you. We need your support. Worldviewfoundation.com. Worldviewfoundation.com. Please go there and make a contribution. Please never underestimate $10 a month, $20 a month. Most of our support comes from small donations. We're a listener-supported broadcast and network. Small donors, very, very frequent small contributions is what really helps us to keep the foundation going, and then to sponsor programs like this, to push out content for free, where we could put it all behind a paywall. We could put the live stream behind a paywall. We could put all of our archives behind a paywall. But our foundation comes along and says, let's help push this out for free as education and broadcast ministry. So we need your support right now. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. And then don't forget about going to worldviewtube.com/sponsors, worldviewtube.com/sponsors. You need a lot of these great products anyway. So why not get these great products at worldviewtube.com/sponsors? And with each purchase, you're helping us. Your Worldview vitamins, your Gatatana, that's the phytoplankton I take in water every day. Dolly gets half a scoop on her food. Worldview water, that is water filters that filter out things like arsenic and prescription drugs and many other things, fluoride. You can belong to our vault where you can access 36 years of radio shows. Come on up. Someone was asking about you the other night. You can find radio. Come here. You can find. Come on. Is that computer in your way? You can find out about radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks. Come here. Here, I'll move that computer. Somebody was asking where you were the other day. I got to get back to plugging so we can get going. But come up. Come on up. There you go. People are saying, where's Dolly been? Where's Dolly? Somebody was asking, a couple people were asking about you. I hadn't shown you in a while. Well, I've been very busy. We've been very busy. We haven't had time to stop and have a little visits with Dolly. But since you're popping up here into the studio, we'll say hi. All right. So everybody's got their Dolly fix. There you go. All right. Back to where we were, Dolly. What do you got? What did you just run off with? Is that a toy? Oh, no. You ran off with paper. All right. Oh, tear it up. You love tearing up paper. But I have to clean it up, you know. All right. Go back to where we were. Worldview Vault. Worldviewtube.com/vault, radio shows, 36 years of radio shows, TV shows, ebooks, audiobooks, and more in the vault. That's a great way to support us. My new books are in there. My new book's in there on Hamas, why I'm a Christian Zionist. My commentary, my complete commentary in the book of Revelation is being edited now. It's going to take a while. That was 53 one-hour lessons. And we're editing it. Jill and I are working on it. It's going to take a while, but we're going to get it done. And that'll eventually be in the vault. You won't need to buy anything. That'll be in the vault for you. Worldview Healthcare, get your emergency medical kits, your antibiotics, have it all on hand, ready to go. In case there's a disruption in services, you have very important medications. You can get an EpiPen. I got an EpiPen. I think that's a smart thing to keep around, to be honest with you. What on earth? That's going to be a lot of paper for me to clean up. Look at the mess you're making. I don't want to clean all that up. Come on. Get your EpiPen and all your emergency antibiotics and everything right there. Worldviewhealthcare.com. Squish for Life, that's the Numi that has the glutathione to detox your cells. Some studies show it may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's. You're nuts. You really are. worldviewtalk.com. That's your satellite phone. That's your solar generator. That's your beanies to knock down the electromagnetic force. That's your bulletproof backpacks, all of that there. Worldview Gold. Michael Weiner, he says his phones are ringing off the hook. And well, they should be. Because the dollar's collapsing apparently here, folks. I don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going down, down, down. And what is gold at tonight, guys? Let me just look real quick. What is gold at? Does anyone know? It's at least $5,300 an ounce. Silver is at like I'm just guessing now. I haven't seen it. There it is, 117. $5,439 an ounce on gold. Silver at $117 an ounce. If you want to put your IRA into gold or silver, get the free packet of information. I don't give financial advice. I give financial opinion. Worldviewgold.com, worldviewgold.com, or 1-877-864-1072, 1-877-864-1072 for a free, no obligation packet of information. And then Bella Grace, I take that each and every day. I've already had it today. I've already had the Bella Grace today. 3 powerful ingredients. And then, of course, you know the Bella Trim to help stimulate your body's own natural GLP-1. All of it here, folks, is available worldviewtube.com/sponsors so we can keep pushing out all this free information. So thank you. We got to get going here. Joining me now is former Special Forces and got his own broadcast as well, Matt Tardio. You can follow him at AngerTab, Find out about his podcast and everything else he's up to. Sir, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
No, thanks for having me back again. Appreciate it.
Hey, have we talked to you since the shooting with Alex Pretty? Have we talked to you since then? All right. So,
no, you sure haven't.
All right, tell me your thoughts on that, because there are folks I know and friends of mine, we're just going to have to agree to disagree with my friends, who were saying that was an execution. That was an execution. And I'm like, you know, the guy shouldn't have been, he has the Second Amendment right to be there, but I don't think he should have been out there. If you think you're going to confront the cops or someone else in a conflict, it might go better for you if you're not bringing your gun. And now we have this new video that's come out of him kicking out the taillights, spitting, cursing, carrying on January 13th before he was killed. So I know the 2 incidents are separate. I'm not trying to conflate the two, but they are showing us that this guy wasn't some innocent little nurse that cared for veterans. He was an agitator, and he was out there. His own parents reportedly had told him, don't be going out there and doing this kind of thing. And it looked like he had a gun that first time. We covered all that and showed that last night. If Logan wants to roll that B-roll, he can. So I want to know what your thoughts are, because I don't see that as an execution, what happened to him. I see it as a sad situation. He had a gun. They yelled, gun, gun. Someone reached in, one of the guys, to take it. The other guys apparently didn't know. It looks like the gun misfired. And after hearing gun, gun, and then a misfire, their instinctive training kicked in, or maybe lack of training. I don't know. Everyone's arguing that. Now Tom Homan shows up and he's saying nothing is perfect. No one should be saying it was. We're going to make some changes. And I don't know what changes he's making internally, but he said he's making some of them. But again, I have friends I agree with on so much, but on this one, they're like, this was an execution. I'm like, I don't think it was. I think there's a problem here, truly, but what I like to say to some of these folks is,
let's talk about the problem.
What if your son was an ICE officer? Okay. How would you be looking at this? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here's the problem: is it's something that's called lawful but awful, right? Where it looks really bad to the general public, but legally speaking, it is lawful when we look at it. And you said that you don't want to conflate the two different situations, but the truth is that earlier encounter with him absolutely matters. He was wearing dang near the exact same clothes, wasn't he?
Yep.
And he did have a fire on him back then.
Yep.
Right. And so what we got to understand now, taking that into account, there could have actually been a bolo put out on this guy beforehand. And so they could have known that, hey, there is a violent agitator that wears this style of clothing. He assaulted, by the way, that's what happens when you spit on an officer. That's assault. He assaulted another officer, and he caused felony amounts of damage to a vehicle. So look out for this guy. So that could have been there. Now, it might not have immediately kicked in, right, at the moment that they go over there and see him. And he was armed. And so this isn't even about whether or not he was legally allowed to carry. The court of law doesn't care when they go and they go, okay, is this murder or is it not murder? Because if he was legally not allowed or illegally carrying, let's state if he's illegally carrying, it doesn't change anything whatsoever. And there's several different Supreme Court cases that have gone over this. And they've actually affirmed that it actually goes down very much so to a reasonable officer's point of view and what they believed at the time and whether or not another reasonable officer would have made the same decision. So the first thing that we take a look at is the contact, whether or not the lawful detention of that individual existed, right? And so when we look at what they were doing, we know ICE was in the area conducting some enforcement operation, and that officer was giving him lawful orders to back up. He was telling him to get back. We saw the confrontation. We saw it happening. The man was in the middle of the street. The officer was telling him to back up. Gentleman refuses to back up. So the officer puts his hands on him and starts pushing him backwards. That's legal. Now, at this point, the man very likely, right, very, very likely, depending on the circumstances right there, could already be arrested for obstructing. Okay. He can already be placed in handcuffs. He definitely could be detained at that point and sat on the curb for officer safety and several other reasons. Okay. At that point, right, the man gets backed away and he gets pushed over to the curb. Another officer, second officer, went over doing the exact same thing to a female. So all of these liberals that are very upset about women not being treated equally, both that woman and that man, Alex, are both being treated equally in this case. They are physically being pushed back. When she was pushed back, he got in the middle of that other law enforcement officer, put his hands on him, and it definitely appears as if he pushed him back. And that is when the brawl started. None of this has to do with him having a firearm on him up to this point. None of it. At that point, he is definitely obstructing, very likely just assaulted an officer, very possible that they recognize him and, oh, this is that guy, and went to go detain him anyways and confirm his identity. So we have all of those things that are there, right? At that point, he begins to resist arrest and he starts to fight with the officers, which is another dumb move. And I will say 99% of the time you get in a fight with a cop and you have a gun on you and you are resisting arrest and you're bringing your hands back towards your waistband, that's a problem. Now, the officer that ended up pulling his pistol that we saw that was standing on the backside, in law enforcement, you have two different types of, generally speaking, officers that you'll have on a scene. You'll have what's called a cover officer. That's the one watching for the safety, right, of those that are in contact with the suspect. In this case, we have the contact officers that are all on the ground wrestling with this guy, right, in a very crude manner is how we're explaining this. And then you had that guy that was in the back acting as a cover officer. You can actually see him. He's not engaging. He's not jumping down on anybody. He's standing in the back and he looks over his shoulder. He's looking at other people. One of the officers, have no idea who it was, shouts gun. And the moment they shout gun, that is a word in law enforcement training that gets grilled into your head, which means there is a gun on the suspect. There is a lethal threat. And the moment they shout gun, you see this man reach down and go to put his hand on his pistol and starts pulling it out of the holster. And about the time he does that is when you see the other hand come around and remove the pistol off of Alex's hip and starts taking it off to the side. At that point, now we know we have a P320. And that pistol within itself has a lot of issues, People, y'all can go look this up online. You don't have to take my word for it. People have done lots of reviews on this firearm. It's had many issues. If that trigger is depressed about 1 millimeter and the slide moves, right, the slide on top of the pistol ends up moving, going back and forth, the gun has been known to malfunction and cause an accidental discharge just from the top of the slide moving back and forth, the very top portion of the firearm. So that's very likely what ended up going bang, then causing that man to get shot. So we can stop right there and we can look at this first engagement, because in my opinion, there was 2 different engagements. Now, the way the Supreme Court has looked at this, every case in the past, and they always end up ruling with the officer, is number 1, what was the officer's perception at the time? What information was known to the officer at the time? Not what information was known to the law enforcement officer afterwards. So it's everything that's known to the officer at the time and whether or not he had a reasonable fear of either serious or great bodily injury and or death for either himself or the other officers. Now, for those of you that have never fired firearms inside of an urban environment, it's kind of hard to hear where it comes from. And that is a very intense and rapidly evolving situation. I believe that's another exact quote that ends up coming from the Supreme Court, that they recognize in these cases
this is a moment
to where officers are making split second life and death decisions when it goes down into this. People are citing the cell phone that's in his hand, right? It was a cell phone. It wasn't a gun. Well, the issue is that, a gun can go from here to here before you can actually react and do anything about it. You're going to end up dead. You're going to end up shot. That's why law enforcement officers are trying to get their guns out first before anybody else. So in that case, we look at it. We say, was there a lawful reason for those officers to contact and to detain him? Yes, there was. Did he resist arrest? Yes. And that is cited in another Supreme Court case, specifically when it goes down to the use of lethal force, when somebody is resisting arrest, that basically ends up heightening the tensions a tad bit there. And the fact that the suspect was known to be armed, any officer out there that said gun, there's this basic rule, okay, where you assume the good in the other officer. If he says gun, you assume there's a gun on him, and that's likely what he did. Now, when you're in that situation and I don't care how long you've been playing this game, I don't care how many gunfights you've been in or how many people you've gotten fights with out on the street as a cop, everybody falls victim to it eventually, right? Like normally it's the rookies that get really nervous, but eventually they end up getting their nerves at a little bit higher of a stake, right? And sometimes everybody gets their nerves up there, right? It happens. Multiple studies have been done on this, and what they end up finding is that when people go into that, they tend to get something called tunnel vision, right? Everybody's aware of that. You end up getting a release of adrenaline into your body, and that starts causing tunnel vision. You have some auditory exclusion that takes place, and you get tunnel vision. Now, what is that officer focusing on? He's focusing on, number one, the target of the suspect. Remember I said he's the cover officer that's going into it, and two, he's also observing the suspect's hands. Now, if that officer was to look down at the time from his point of view, what he would see is an empty holster. Likely, he sees an empty holster and a black object in his hand. As he's scrambling to get to the other side in order to have a clear line of shot on this individual in case he has to pull the trigger, suddenly a loud bang goes off, and he puts around another guy. So, is it reasonable for the officer to assume in that position with a violent suspect that was armed, that has a black object in his hand, which an officer had shouted gun with an empty holster, and there's a gunshot that goes off in very close proximity, for him to assume and have reasonable fear that that officer or any other officer or even the civilians that are standing around could suffer great or serious bodily injury or death? And the answer is going to be yes, obviously. Right now, I can't say that because I don't have all of this officer's testimony, and I don't know particularly, right, what he was aware of at the time. But very likely it's going to go down that rabbit hole. And that's going to be reaffirmed again that, yes, they're going to side with that officer. Doesn't mean he might not get, some administrative punishment. The whole thing looked like a crap show when they were going about it. So it doesn't mean he might not be subject to some type of administrative punishment, right? The second shooting involved was what I believe was another officer where you see them start to back up and they go and they draw and they start to move their pistol out. Now, same thing that I talked about before, where you have an officer that is acting based on, the best of intentions off of the information that they know at the time, et cetera. And that how the moment gunshots go off, the moment things like that happen, you get the sudden spike of adrenaline and people end up going into tunnel vision. When that officer is backing away and he goes to draw a bead on that suspect, the average draw time that I've seen when I went through law enforcement training and training law enforcement officers over the years is your average draw time out of the holster, right? Because you have different levels of retention on holsters, okay? But the average draw time out of a holster most of the time is about 1.5 seconds. If I can get a cop to on a buzzer and we're talking on a static target on a buzzer, to get his weapon out of the holster and put a round on target in about 1.5 seconds, I'm generally speaking okay, but obviously I want him to do better. Maybe down to 1.3, down to 1.1 makes me feel a heck of a lot better, and anything under that, I'm really, really pleased. In this case, we have about that time frame, all right, that it goes off. So what's that tell me? Well, that tells me that officer, when he made that decision, right, he's got those gunshots going off, he makes the decision that he's got to shoot. So now we got to shoot. What happens? You get that rush of adrenaline, you go into tunnel vision. Now add in the fact that you have a moving target. That officer made the conscious decision to pull the trigger the moment, all right, you see him go and reach for his holster and start bringing it out, because we have gunshots, we have a violent suspect that everybody knows is armed, and gunshots are going off. That tunnel vision kicks in, he goes and he tries to put a bead on that suspect as he's falling over, and he's likely just zeroing in on what he's trying to hit, and that's that. the way that these things are judged also is by a conscious act, which is why I say that you got two separate shootings here. All right. So you have the conscious act of the first officer. All right. And he could have shot that firearm 5 different times. He could have that first officer could have put a string of 5 rounds into that suspect, and it would have been judged and looked at the exact same way, as long as it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, as if he would have shot 1, 2, or 3. Right. Lethal force is lethal force. Right. Let's be perfectly clear about that. If I feel the need to put a bullet into somebody, all right, that means that I understand that I am trying to kill this person. Right. At the end of the day, that's how the courts look at it. The same thing goes for that other officer that's backing up. That is a conscious thought. That is one conscious act. All right. Where the problem is we have an entire society that expecting our law enforcement officers to be superhuman, to be able to fight adrenaline, to be able to keep their eyeballs open, and to be able to know all facts at all time. What's happening right now is you have an entire society that's trying to judge these cops based on information that they discovered after the fact, that have probably never been in a fist fight, let alone a shootout. And they're sitting there trying to do it. And they also don't understand case law, and they also don't understand legally how these things work. I hope that clarifies it.
100%. That's amazing. And you made a very good point, which was when they see an empty holster with all that's going on, and now they hear gun, 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 and then they see an empty holster, and their eye may catch this black thing, which was his phone. But again, this is all happening so fast. Their brain would, I guess, say to them, empty holster, and there's the gun. Gun's gone off. He's shooting. I mean, this is all happening so fast, but that's interesting. They may have seen the empty holster, which gave them indication he's gotten the gun in his hand.
He got the gun in his hands. Now, here's something else to kind of like drive this point home as well, right? Humans, we have the fight or flight mentality, right? And people have turned it into fight, flight, or freeze. And then they've also added another F on top of it. It doesn't matter. I'm going to give an example for people at home to kind of understand this. If we look at the situation, and most people, when they're going through something, your brain tends to tell you the worst case scenario when something comes up, and then you end up calming and talking yourself down. Right? Maybe you get like a heavy tax return. Maybe you get, a bad phone call, or that you weren't, I don't know. But a lot of people tend to go to the worst case scenario. Well, when you're in that situation, right? When you're in that situation and all you want to do is go home to your family, and you are in fight or flight mode, what do you think your brain is telling you when you have a suspect that is fighting, that is armed, that now has an empty holster, all right? And then a gunshot goes off. The brain automatically jumps to that worst case scenario to protect you. And in a situation where you're also acting as cover for everybody else, you want to make sure they get home alive as well. You don't want to be the one that has to try to go to sleep at night because you let one of your friends get shot because you made a bad mistake.
Now, what errors do you think were on the part of the ICE people? Looking at it now and analyzing it, and you were training them, what would you have said they did wrong, if anything?
Yeah. So at the moment, I feel the need to one, get my hands out and push somebody back of that nature. Great. I have no problem doing that and just softly pushing them back. The moment they go to fight me, right? So most of the time, the moment you put your hands on somebody as a law enforcement officer is going to be the moment that they choose to fight you. In this case, this guy chose not to. And if you go back and you watch it, this guy goes and he just immediately is very, very combative off the front. So recognizing his body language and his behavior, the de-escalation, or even just giving him lawful orders other than to back up, right? It could have been very simple. Sir, turn around, put your hands behind your back. You're being detained. It is something that simple all the way in the beginning, is he's refusing to back up, and you could have put him in cuffs and sat his butt down. Now, I also don't know what else they had going on the ground. The other big issue that I have is with how this shooting kind of went down. I didn't think it was the best angle, and I'm not trying to sit here and second guess them because, again, I wasn't there on the ground. I have no idea what was going on here. The angle of entry, I don't know, of this gentleman's firearm when he ends up shooting it. And so here you can see the cop up on the screen. He's looking and he's kind of watching what's going on. He's about to hear gun, and he backs up and he immediately goes to his holster at the same time that guy takes off. And that's what I'm talking about, to where there you go. Right. So that's where that tunnel vision ends up coming into play. And you see him start to move around to get a clear line of shot, but he maneuvers around in a way in which he's got a direct line of fire into that agent that's exactly opposite of him. And you see that guy get up and go. So luckily that round probably stopped inside the suspect. Contrary to a lot of the Charlie Kirk conspiracy theorists, bullets do that, right? Even when fired from close range. So very, very, very lucky in that case. But at the same time, it's one of those life or death situations. If the guy's got a gun and you've got it properly angled, you hope that bullet's going to ride a bone down. Could have been what he was thinking. I honestly, I don't know. But ultimately just gaining a good physical control. I also would have liked to see some serious strikes on him beforehand. Our law enforcement has got so, how do I want to say this? We've got, and at one point there was a guy that ended up bringing over the can of OC spray and smashed it in the guy's face, it looked like. That's great. Getting head control on this guy, having actual physical blows to his head. Remember when I said lawful but awful? You need to get this guy's attention because he's clearly amped up. Anybody that says that they should have used a taser or that they needed a taser doesn't know what they're talking about. You're talking dead of winter over inside of Minnesota. The odds of those probes going through the clothing is pretty low. On top of that, you need to have a spread between the probes. And so you'd end up having to shoot probes into him, hoping that they actually pierce his clothing and then drive stun him with the taser on another portion if they even have the right version. So all sorts of things to like discuss on how these things work. But at the end of the day, there should have been, in my opinion, the moment he started a fight with a gun, there should have been strikes that were being thrown in order to get him under control. If that makes sense. Like it shouldn't have been one guy with a can of mace coming from the outside. I should have been dropping some knees into this guy's head in order to get him to go to sleep,
Absolutely. All right, let's switch to Iran real quick. You just put out, we're going to bomb Iran. Why is Trump switching the narrative? I thought he said we destroyed their enrichment capabilities and stockpiles. 6EA 18G Crowler electronic warfare jets are headed to the Middle East and accompanied by more refueling tankers. There are now 3 U.S. Navy carrier strike groups reportedly operating outside of Iran. Other aircraft have deployed, including nuclear sniffers, signal intelligence platforms, combat search and rescue platforms, and command and control platforms, and more. Additional THAAD ballistic missile defense systems have also been flown into the region to defend U.S. troops and allies. Since the 12-day war, Iran has repeatedly asserted that it will continue uranium enrichment. Yesterday, they denied any negotiation on the issue. Meanwhile, upwards of 30,000 people are now being reported to have been killed by the regime during the 0126 uprising. Earlier this month, Trump threatened Iran by stating if they continue to kill civilians, we are, quote, locked and loaded, end quote. Well, the IRGC has killed tens of thousands. Now the narrative is enrichment. Oddly enough, IRGC was operating the oil tankers that the U.S. seized outside of Venezuela. Yesterday, Marco Rubio warned of Iranian drone factories and as a justifiable for future bombing of Venezuela during a Senate Foreign Affairs hearing. The truth, question mark, question mark, question mark. They will never tell us. What's going on here? What's the real motive?
Yeah, Russia and China. And just right before I came on the program, I believe I saw that Russia, China, and Iran are scheduled to launch a military drill over in the Gulf of Oman, right outside of Iran. We have 3 strike carrier groups as well that have been reported over there. Only 2 that I'm aware of. The Lincoln and the George Bush, I believe, are the 2 that I'm aware of. And I got told there's a 3rd one over there that's unconfirmed. On top of all of this aircraft, right? Not to mention a bunch of fast movers that are stationed over inside of Jordan and tons of other things, right? The issue goes down into Russia, China controlling exports of silver, and then also China, Russia, and Iran in particular, down over inside Venezuela was very, very deep. So from my understanding of it, China has been helping out Russia. Okay. So you have this axis of evil of what I like to call them, to where you have Russia, Iran, and China. Russia gets in the war over inside of Ukraine. That's soaking up a ton of U.S. munitions. Russian Spetsnaz were working side by side with Hezbollah for about a decade. And then, of course, Hezbollah is one of the main parties in this war over outside Israel and also destabilization. They were backing up the Assad regime over inside Syria. Bashar Assad now, he's living over inside Moscow. So there's a really good connection there. IRGC was also pretty deep over inside of Syria and over inside of Lebanon, working with Hezbollah. So You also have the Houthis down over inside of Yemen that shut down the Red Sea. We were bombing the crap out of them. You still have a bunch of merchant vessels that are not allowed to use it. Most of them are sailing around the Cape of Good Hope to get all the way around to Africa, 10 times the distance. And then you have China that is rumored to have flown 20, lift aircraft over into Iran. The United States back in November of this last year ended up boarding a cargo ship and seizing a bunch of weapons off that cargo ship that was en route to Iran to drop off weapons to the state of Iran. And Iran was running oil from Venezuela back to China. China had lent a bunch of money to Maduro to keep him in power. And then the Bella One within itself, we end up hearing that there's 3 tons of gold that was inside the Bella One, in addition to numerous weapons components. And when Marco Rubio did state that yesterday, he said the only reason that the U.S. is looking or would possibly be, dropping munitions over inside of Venezuela is if we end up discovering there's an Iranian drone factory that's going to be launching attacks on the United States of America or against, our troops. And he said that for a reason, right? Because the reports are that Iran was shipping weapons over into Venezuela and backing up Maduro. Additionally, that Maduro was giving diplomatic passports to members of Hezbollah, the IRGC. And so really what we're looking at here is we're looking at this crux, which is going to be Iran, that's been heavily supporting China by shipping oil over into their economy to keep things pretty dirt cheap, to keep the dirt cheap production going on. China that's been dominating the silver market. We're looking at $10, $15 over spot right now over inside of Shanghai. That's sucking all the gold back in there. China is one of the largest exports of silver. You got 60% of the world's exports in silver are coming out of China. And that has greatly restricted the amount that the U.S. is getting, right? Not to mention we just don't manufacture enough, which is why the Department of War just invested a little under $3 billion in conjunction with, I want to say it was Bank of America. No, JP Morgan. In a brand new smelter here in the United States of America. It should be online in the next couple of years. That way we can start refining our own critical minerals, right? Because we don't have enough. COMEX vaults are draining, and that silver is very critical when it comes to waging war. So as long as we stay in this persistent state of conflict in between, Ukraine and Russia, as long as our munitions are being soaked up over there, as long as they're being soaked up in the Middle East, that means our silver supply is going to be draining. Not to mention, you have all these other things that are going off. Last year, Trump had said, if you attack the United States dollar, you're going to war with the United States. And what we have seen, in my opinion, is we've seen China and Russia attacking the United States dollar. And I think their goal is to collapse the U.S. monetarily. And the Iranian regime is kind of right there in the middle of it, right? They've been doing all of the dirty work. In my opinion, I think Russia and China are using them as cannon fodder, but you also have Russian nuclear scientists, right, that are over inside of Iran that are, working on these uranium enrichment facilities. That's why we had such a long wait during the 12-day war. All right, because we had over 100 Russian scientists that were running around on the ground over at these different nuke sites, and we had to give them time to get the heck off the X before we killed them. We also need to negotiate. If we're going to get that uranium out of there, well, we need a trusted country that Iran's going to trust in order to do it. Not that we trust Russia, but Iran does, and they're capable of actually taking that stuff. They're trained in it. They know what they're doing with enriched uranium, so they would have to pull it out. Well, now we've got another issue, right? And that issue is that they start killing their people. Now, the Iranian people, they view that as, why isn't the world helping us? We want to overthrow this regime, which is great. But you're never going to have a successful regime change without the military actually jumping in and taking part in that, right? Especially in a place like Iran. It's just not going to happen. And we have yet to see the military do that. Now, that could be because, Mossad, the CIA, et cetera, are on the ground working, and they're waiting for a specific trigger in order to launch strikes against them. And then you'll see that coup kind of happen and come out, and they'll take back over their country. But unfortunately, it's one of those things where, you want to take a radical regime like Iran that is as dug in as deep as it is in the world. I hate to say this, but a lot of people are going to die in the process. Right? It's not like America during our revolution. That didn't happen. And it happens everywhere.
I know you got I know you got to go, but let me just ask you real quick. What do you make of this? Vizgard is reporting that U.S. just flew MC-130J Commando 2 aircraft from the UK to Azerbaijan. The plane was developed for infiltration and exfiltration operations by U.S. Special Forces. What do you make of that, and when do you think this strike is coming?
So, yeah, I mean, I make a little bit out of it. So I would believe it's going to end up being a trigger-based strike. So to where certain things are going to have to fall in place. I'm not privy to the plan, so I don't know when that's going to be, but I detailed some of the things I would expect to see on the ground. So you need certain things in motion. We also need to make sure that the U.S. troops are taken care of, right? We've got the THAAD, like I said, the THAAD systems that are deploying. Those are, surface-to-air missiles, anti-ballistic missile capabilities. They're being deployed throughout the region because Iran's going to throw everything out there. I really don't think we're going to have an incursion into Iran. I really don't. I don't see that as being a viable option. The only way I actually do see that as a viable option is to make sure that the enriched uranium ends up getting taken out. Other thing that Marco Rubio said the other day at the Foreign Affairs hearing was he said he's not sure what's going to happen in Iran after the Ayatollah is removed, after that takes place, which, by the way, is another issue. A completely different issue. Ayatollah is the religious leader of the Shia Muslims. And so we bomb and we kill the Ayatollah. Guess what we just did?
Just put IRGC in power, right?
Well, yeah, sure. You're going to have to work down the chain, which is why you also need that military on the ground to flip-flop. And it's not like, we would just take out the Ayatollah. IRGC is a foreign terror organization. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump doesn't need the approval of Congress to kill terrorists, just like Obama didn't need to do it, just like Bush doesn't need to do it. Didn't need to do it. So that's kind of what we're looking at, right? Is unfortunately for the Ayatollah, yeah, you're a leader of a major portion of the Muslim community, but you're also a terrorist leader. Same thing for anybody in the IRGC. They're all fair game. So there's honestly no telling what the government's going to do. There's no telling who they're working with on the ground and what they plan on doing in overthrowing this regime. But in my opinion, the goal is going to end up being regime change here. Because they have reaffirmed time and time again in the UN and even after we bomb them that they're going to continue to enrich uranium. They claimed that they had moved a bunch of their enriched uranium off-site to another location and that we ended up not actually getting all of it. So if that's the case, we don't want that enriched uranium to fall in the hands of potentially another radical regime over inside of that country. So the only way I could possibly see an incursion would be one that most likely a lot of people wouldn't hear about, just to blow that uranium stockpile underground and then bury it with a bomb on top. But that's a pretty high risk operation, and I just don't see it happening.
So they're not trying to pull a Maduro on Khomeini?
No, not that I'm aware of, no.
Here's his X account where you find out about his daily broadcast as well. There it is, at AngerTab, Find everything about him and his show on YouTube, Speak the Truth, and more. Veteran Matt Tardio. Glad to have you with us again tonight. Thank you, Matt.
Thanks for having me.
Matt Tardio, checking in. Check out his site, AngerTab, at AngerTab. We'll be right back after this break. We have a big announcement, folks, something we've been waiting on for several months, and it's now here. It's called Bella Melt. You were on it for just 1 week when you lost 3 pounds. So in the first week, you lost 3 pounds on this, right?
That is correct.
Your GLP-1 is a natural hormone that's in every single one of our bodies. And your GLP-1 lets you know if you're full. It's a satiety hormone. So when your GLP is working properly, it does help suppress your appetite as well as reduce those cravings. It's a sugar-free fast melt caramel. So what it's going to do best is it's going to reduce your sugar cravings or any other cravings you have in your body. It's going to suppress that appetite. But where Melissa got the most benefit, I think, over the last week was the L-carnitine. The L-carnitine tells your mitochondria, this is where you make, we talked about it before, this is where you produce energy in your cells. It actually tells those mitochondria to burn fat for fuel. We're noticing other people losing up to 7 pounds in the first week. 4 pounds has been about the average. As you lose weight and as you take these Bella Melts, it's going to help lower that blood sugar in your body as well.
All the information is there. MelissaHouseBG.com, MelissaHouseBG.com. Just now introducing for the first time Bella Melt with GLP-1 Fast Action. All right, guys, we have our reporter on the ground in Israel. He's also a 30-year licensed Israeli tour guide. And we asked him to go all over Israel and do live tours for us that we are able to share with you, okay? And we're going to bring the latest report to you right now from our reporter on the ground, our personal tour guide here, our personal network tour guide. How many networks not only have a reporter on the ground in Israel, but a guy who's a 30-year licensed Israeli tour guide? I think we're the only one. I don't know of another. And he's brought to you by our foundation. So if you appreciate these free reports, we give him love offerings, folks, regular love offerings for all he does for us. And if you appreciate that, we need your support to keep, well, things like what you're about to see coming. Worldviewfoundation.com, worldviewfoundation.com. Let's go to Israel and our report tonight from Aaron.
Hey everyone, shalom. Aharon Levarko speaking to you on behalf of Worldview Television and Radio. I'm speaking here from the very north of Israel. This area is called the Golan, which is a small area of a larger area, which in the Bible is called the Bashan. This was one of the areas we read of in Deuteronomy chapter 3, where Joshua and the Israelites, when they came in on their conquests during approximately 1100 BC, they came and they took the Bashan. And it actually lists and mentions that they took the cities. The cities had high walls, and King Og came out to fight against them, and they defeated them. So this has a lot of history, even before that, going back to the Copper Age, to the Bronze Age, the Iron Age, and then the Biblical Age. Here today, we have a site called the Katzrin Talmudic Village, and it consists of a number of ruins and remains going back centuries. The main period where we capture is from about the 4th to the 6th centuries BC. For example, you can see here a old synagogue. The old synagogue, and you can see the entrance here, and you can see the stone is made out of very strong basalt. Now the basalt is volcanic rock. And when volcanic molten lava reaches 1,000 Celsius, it then hardens into this rock here. And most of the stone in this area, even from down in by the Sea of Galilee, which is about 25 miles away from here, it's mostly this basalt rock. You can see it everywhere, which is a very, very difficult rock to build with. But it makes fantastic, beautiful structures like this here. You can see some of the decorations around the entrance to the synagogue. And then you can see you've got 2 columns there, or rather 2 passageways, kind of in the shape of an apse. And you've got these columns, pillars with capitals on the top. And you've even got some decorative stones that we've found here. Some beautiful stones. And up here, you've even got a bema. Now, a bema was the pulpit. This is the area where the rabbis would come and teach. Sometimes they even had what was called the seat of Moses. We don't have one here, but we have one that's been found in another New Testament site called Chorazin. Now, what's interesting about this place is here is where a Jewish compiled historical books called the Talmud were really focused on. Now, the Talmud is, apart from the Hebrew Bible, which we would call the Old Testament, the Talmud is the number one set of books of authority in Judaism. The Talmud basically is a compilation of laws, writings, discussions, rabbis and their students, how they would come to conclusions about certain ideas and rules, and looking at it from different angles. In fact, they say that the Talmud teaches that every verse in the Bible has what's called shiv'im panim, 70 faces, which is hyperbolic, meaning every verse has so many different angles of looking at it. So this is where the Talmud was really focused on, in a place called Katzrin up here in the Golan. And then here we have another structure called the House of Rabbi Abun. Now, there was a famous rabbi going back into this period about 1600 years ago. And what's interesting about this is you've got there a small little fireplace that they've been able to find. And we have all kinds of things like pottery we've been able to find as well. These are similar to the jars that were found in Qumran at the Dead Sea, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. So that gives you an idea of this kind of jars. There's a classic window. And here's a typical house going back. I'm glad I'm short because the ceilings aren't that high. Here's part of the urn as well. And it's kind of been reconstructed as well, where they would cook things, or how they would cook things. And then you've got a living room. It's a bit dark, so we can't really go in too much. But you've got there the living room. And you know what this reminds us of? Actually, this has a little bit more light over here. There you've got a table and chairs. This is where they would sleep. They would all be pretty much in one main room. And this reminds me, there's a story in Mark chapter 2 of a paralytic. And the Lord had the authority and said, your sins are forgiven. There's an upper chamber. Let me try and see if I can go up the ladder holding it here. There's another table with the basalt interior there. And you've got the roofing. This particular one is made out of wood. But most of the time, actually, it would be made out of date palm branches, where they would tie them together, and that would be your roofing. Now, this has a modern 21st century light, but in those days they would have oil lamps with the wick. And of course, going back to that story in Mark 2 where the Lord said, son, your sins are forgiven. And of course, he was criticized for that. But he said, so that you may know that the Son of Man has power on the earth, stand up and walk. And this incredible story shows the power of not only the Lord, but the power of his words and the power to forgive. And I really cannot put it into any more stronger words, but to say that the power of forgiveness, knowing that we have a loving Heavenly Father who wants to have a relationship with every human on the earth, and he's offering his forgiveness. And that the house, that synagogue, reminds us of the Jewish lifestyle going back 2,000 years, 1,600 years to the Talmudic period, here at Katzrin up on the Golan Heights. Shalom everyone, this is Aharon Levarko, and I'm here at the Golan Heights. This area, the Golan, is actually part of a greater region that the Bible calls the Bashan. It talks about the bulls of Bashan. You can see some of the open air space there, lots of agriculture, lots of open air with eucalyptus trees, olive groves, lots of open barren terrain there, you can see. And we're right on the border with Lebanon, which is just up there in the distance. And then if you go more to the east, you'll get Syria. It's a bit cloudy today, but this is the region where we are. And in 1967, at the infamous Six-Day War, Israel took over this land. This used to be Syria. This was part of the larger Syria. But we took this over in 1967. The United Nations called it disputed land. In 1973, 6 years later, there was what was called the Yom Kippur War. That was a far more threatening war to our security and our existential threat here. But we were able to weather the storm with our leader, Golda Meir. Sadly, the United Nations have said that Israel are occupiers of this land. Legally, but they're still occupiers. Well, that all changed in 2019. June the 16th, the President of the United States, Donald Trump, recognized this land as sovereign Israeli territory. And he declared the Golan Heights sovereign. And as an act of gratitude and appreciation, there was a community that had been established from the 1980s up here in the Golan where I'm standing. They decided that they wanted to dedicate their community to Donald Trump in recognition for him recognizing the Golan Heights as sovereign Israeli land. So behind me, and let me turn my camera around, there we have at the entrance a sign, Ramat Trump, which means the Trump Heights, with the Israeli and American flags there in recognition and in honor of what he did by declaring. And there also a beautiful sculpture, not only of our national symbol, the menorah, the 7-branch candelabrum, but there we have an eagle, symbol of the United States. In fact, we actually get eagles out here, not the bald eagle, but we have a different kind. And then here we have a plaque which says here, in honor of President Donald Trump, donated by the Jewish American Society for Historic Preservation, with support from the Golan Regional Council, July 4th, 2020. So we are so appreciative of all that Donald Trump has done for Israel. We pray, we continue to pray that he will continue to do good. Here, as I'm standing on the 28th of July, 28th of January, 2026, not far from here is Lebanon, as I mentioned, and Syria, and beyond is Iran. And we are waiting. We have all the American fleet, the Navy, the Air Force, not all, but a lot. They say that the Abraham Lincoln battleship has more firepower on that battleship than the whole of the Israeli Air Force. A remarkable amount of firepower in the region right now as I'm standing. We have a lot of security in the area. You've got there a security fence. You've even got here, just in case there's troubles coming from the other side of the fence, you've got a solid stone wall there with the bags. You've got minefields out here. So even in a place like this, with what's going on in the land, we're waiting for things to break out at any moment. And so that's why the scriptures tell us to pray for the peace of not only Jerusalem, but for Israel. Pray for our neighbors, pray for our enemies as we are waiting for things to break out. But we are appreciative to all those people that stand and support Israel and who pray for us. Shalom from the Golan Heights, the place that is called the Trump Heights.
Joining me now is Dr. Basima to talk about heavy metals in our food. The other night we talked about arsenic in candy. And I asked the doctor, before we went on the air, I was talking to her. I said, I want to talk about arsenic in candy. She said, well, we got arsenic in a lot of other stuff. I'm like what? Rice, fish? How's this happening? We'll get to that right now with Dr. Basima. Dr. Basima Williams of worldviewvitamins.com, worldviewvitamins.com. All right, Dr. Basima, heavy metals, arsenic in candy and other foods. So I told you about this. This is what we went over the other night. My beloved Tootsie Rolls. I can't eat them anymore. According to this study that was done by the First Lady of Florida, she did a press conference, and I guess she was working with Dr. Latipo, their Surgeon General down there in Florida. They're claiming these things have arsenic, and I'm looking at what is the acceptable number of pieces in a year for a child, 8 pieces, for an adult, 20 pieces. So my wife threw all my Tootsie Rolls away at my request, but there you go. Thankfully, it's not in a Hershey bar, because who doesn't love a good old Hershey bar every now and then? But man, it's not in my Whoppers.
Yeah.
Thankfully,
are the
it's not in
Reese's
my
peanut
Whoppers.
butter?
Huh?
Are Reese's peanut butter cups in there?
Do you like those?
And that's, if I'm going to do something bad, that's what it's going to be. I don't see it.
I don't see it in
Reese's
there.
Pieces. Yeah, I saw Reese's Pieces, and I don't mind the Unreal candy, so I don't, but there's a Reese's Pieces. I don't know if that's a peanut butter or just the Reese's Pieces.
Right.
But anyway.
Yeah. They're saying that it has nothing in it. Reese's Pieces has nothing.
Oh,
Risk not
that's good.
identified. Risk.
I'm good.
You're good. You're good. You're
Just
good.
kidding. I mean, if the lead doesn't kill you, the sugar certainly will. So
Jolly
you gotta
Ranchers? Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm telling you, high concentration.
You know what another name for a
sugar.
gay farmer is, right? What another name for a Jolly Rancher?
Oh. Okay.
I got a bunch of those jokes.
Yes,
Don't
yes.
get me started.
I think you got yourself started there.
I
on
did.
That one.
I did. I got
Yeah.
the First Lady of Florida got me going here on this. She's
Yeah.
responsible because she did this report, which
Yeah.
had Jolly Ranchers on it. But anyway, now don't any of you out there be using my joke? Because I know some of you.
No, I won't. Don't worry, I won't use it.
Come on, that's a good joke.
Yeah, I will say, the first time that heavy metals in food became apparent to me is when I did this one blood test that I do on my patients, looking primarily for electrolytes, minerals, and vitamins and amino acids, and just looking at their overall health and wellness status. And part of that test has heavy metals in it, and it's just a blood test. So it's not a urine provocated heavy metals test. Like, that's what you really want to know and do. If you really are treating heavy metals, that's what you want to do. But this is just a screen, and the mercury was off the charts high. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And so then we rechecked it, of course. And this time we paid attention to actually saying, hey, you know what? Don't eat these foods that are high in mercury, especially tuna and swordfish and, things like that. So she stayed away from those. We did her blood work again, totally normal. Same exact thing happened with arsenic. I had a patient who was really high in arsenic, and first thing we did is, did you eat rice by any chance? And she had, and of course, but so now we have to tell people, we actually give you a list of things to avoid before you actually get this blood work done. Mm-hmm. Otherwise we could have a falsely elevated level. It's transient, which means that it'll go up in your blood, and then hopefully your liver gets rid of it. It goes through and back into your gut. But can you imagine you're actually absorbing through your gut heavy metals from these foods? And if you have a heavy metal overload, what happens to that heavy metal in your body? That's the big thing, right? Because heavy metal accelerates oxidative stress. Remember when we talked about oxidative stress, things that create free radicals, a lot of inflammation in your body? Heavy metals is a huge cause of that. And especially one of the areas that's so under talked about is in the blood vessels. So advancing and quickening atherosclerotic heart disease, heart attacks, strokes, your heart not working well, things like that. So what happens to those heavy metals when you have an overburden or too much that your body can't get rid of it is it has to hide somewhere because you can't live with your mercury levels being that high. And so it has to hide in fat cells, but it also chooses some specific organs to hide in, including your brain. And this is one of those things where we talk about, high risk for dementia is toxin exposure. So hides in your brain, hides in your kidneys, hides in liver cells. So fat cells, it's preferred. But when those become too heavy with metals, then it starts going into other places more readily.
Mm-hmm. And that's why that's one reason why I do this Numi every day with the glutathione to detox my cells. Because some studies show it may remove mercury from your brain, helping prevent Alzheimer's, dementia, and Parkinson's, which I don't want. I mean, there's a lot of things I would rather die from than Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, or dementia, okay? Like stepping in front of a bus would be a lot better way to die than Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, or dementia. Not to mention, I don't want to put that burden on my family. Plus, if I'm going to be around, I want to be of sound mind, right? But I do the glutathione because I can't find any other way to detox my cells like with glutathione than the swish that I use, which, do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, glutathione is absolutely amazing if it makes it into your body. So that's the one thing with glutathione when you're taking it orally that you want it to be in a liposomal solution and you want to swish it around in your mouth so for better absorption because it is glutathione is a chain of 3 amino acids. So it's kind of like eating, chicken, and your body's going to process it in the stomach and break it down unless it's in a special form. So you want to make sure that you're taking the right form. This is why also a lot of people like to take something called NAC, which we have in our everyday immune supplement.
What's NAC? I know what NAD is, but what's NAC?
Yeah. NAC is N-acetylcysteine, and cysteine is the amino acid, one of the 3 amino acids that makes up glutathione, and it is the rate limiting step of making glutathione. So when your body needs to make it, it runs out of cysteine and it can't keep making it. So if you want to ensure that what your body's production of glutathione is maximum every day, then you take NAC every day. And it's in our bottle of, I don't think you have it up yet, but if you get our immune pack, it's in the immune pack. If you get the oxidative stress pack, it's in our, obviously we're going to include NAC in just about everything because NAC is so good for so many reasons, but it does ensure that your body will have a full ability to make that. It'll definitely support that production naturally of glutathione. When you take glutathione orally in the liposomal phase, like what you do every day, it's great, by the way, but it only lasts about 2 hours. So if you can have the things ready for your body to make 24/7, so if you're putting NAC into your body on a regular basis and also eating foods that are high in that are nutrient dense, then you will be able to make your own glutathione every day.
Excellent.
You also need some. You also need some like B vitamins and selenium and zinc and all these things support glutathione production, but that's the rate limiting step. So,
excellent.
Yeah.
So this is why we're on our team, guys. Where else are you going to learn this, right?
Yeah, we tell our patients don't eat fish more than twice a week for this reason. That's the other reason why we put omega-3 in every single foundational pack. It's also why we triple distill the omega-3 we use because we try to extract out all that. That's why you shouldn't go buy a big, huge bottle of omega-3 from Costco because it's probably rancid, already old. It's been exposed to a lot of light. And I guarantee you for that price, it is not triple distilled like ours is. And also ours has the technology of being very highly absorbed. So anyway, it is impossible to get enough omega-3 in your diet if you're not supplementing and if you're worried about heavy metals. Now, so you can't be eating fish more than twice a week.
Okay, so let's go to that. So I like to eat salmon. I like salmon. You're saying I should not be eating it more than twice a week.
Right. 2 to 3 times a week.
Because of arsenic that's in it or what?
The mercury that's in it.
The mercury.
Yeah.
And why is there mercury in salmon?
because of the contamination in the waters.
And that may be why there's arsenic in some of these candies as well then, right?
Right. 100%. It's, lead and mercury. Think about lead and all the contaminated soil, the water, the old pipes, all these things that we have. And so, and these heavy metals are they're real. And I will tell you that because as a functional medicine doctor, I've treated a lot of heavy metal patients with IV chelation and with oral DMSA and other strong chelators, always supporting them with a good glutathione, just like you mentioned earlier. And yes, glutathione does support the heavy metal, your body naturally getting rid of heavy metals. So,
well, that's why of course, we sell these Worldview water filters that filter out arsenic and all kinds of other problems, right? So we talk about some of these foods, the candies, I do more research in it, but it may be because their manufacturing process is using water that has this stuff already in the water in the older pipes and manufacturing facilities, right?
That's right, exactly.
Now let's talk about rice.
Not to mention sugar. Think about sugar and sugar cane and how it's grown, and rice, which is typically grown in like flooded, what they call flooded paddy fields.
Yeah, we're here in Arkansas, and I'm sure you come down. If you see the rice fields, they flood them, right? And they're standing. The rice is standing in that water, and that you're saying that water with the pipes and everything else can get arsenic in it.
Well, in flooded soils, arsenic from the soil is more readily available.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So not just from the water, but the soil itself.
Right, exactly. It gets into the water. And so when you use rice at home, make sure you are rinsing it out 4 or 5 times. Absolutely. So definitely arsenic occurs naturally in a lot of soil and due to breakdown of minerals. And so we're going to see arsenic in our food, and rice is a big one. So we actually specifically say, do not eat rice. It's we give you a list of foods not to eat about a week before your lab test, because we don't want to be chasing falsely positive labs. But also it's kind of an eye opener for, when I first started doing heavy metals, just to see how high it goes just after one day of eating something like rice or tuna or salmon, that kind of thing. So definitely.
Let's talk then about rice. So fish, rice, eat maybe twice a week. But long term, if you're taking arsenic, long term, what are the consequences? Or is the amount at twice a week so small your body can filter it out?
You should be able to filter it out, but what we always say is... Can I
filter out my 8 pieces of, my 20 pieces a year of Tootsie Rolls, or is that not a thing?
Probably, if you're eating healthy otherwise. So the point is something we call, think of a scale. Think of this scale. I always tell my patients, and if you're adding in toxin, what are you doing to take it out? And it's when we become toxic burden and we have too much toxin for our livers to be able to adjust for and compensate for, that we start having problems, skin cancers, skin lesions, cardiovascular disease, kidney damage. A lot of these heavy metals are nephrotoxic to the kidneys. So not good. And they're neurologically damaging your brain tissue, your nerves, peripheral neuropathy, things like that. So long-term damage when we're being overburdened by them. So if it was just heavy metals, great. But then what if you have a diet that's high in sugar? What if you also smoke tobacco? What if you have a job that exposes you to long-term amounts of tar? You're laying out tar on the street for a living, or you're an airline pilot or a stewardess that's getting a lot of the fumes in. So that toxic burden keeps going up and up and up. So we talked about oxidative stress and the balance between oxidation and something called redox. So the oxidative stress and redox potential. So the more things like NAC, omega-3, glutathione, whole vegetables, all the phytonutrients and minerals and vitamins that help enzymes run and operate like they're supposed to, healing leaky gut, all sorts of things like that. And I'll tell you, things it's so silly, but it really works. We actually, one of your listeners actually has had a problem with his gut for 20 years, and he's almost 60. And you know what he told me? He'd rather not eat so that he doesn't have to have the pain, but he can't live if he doesn't eat. And 2 weeks into the Feel Good Gut Health course, he is 60% better without taking a single supplement yet. Of course, we have the live Q&As on Fridays for the Feel Good Gut Health people. So a lot of our listeners are using something like L-glutamine or digestive enzymes, which are also found on that website. But, the most important thing is what are you putting in that's good compared to what you're also putting in that's bad. So
let me just back up one thing you said there. He said he felt better when he didn't eat. Because my wife and I have had that conversation in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We both feel better when we don't eat. We're like, well, we got to eat, but we often feel better when we're not hardly eating anything or go for a long stretch. We'll go 12, 15 hours without eating. And we're like, we feel so good and I'm not hungry, but I know I have to eat, but man alive, I feel so good right now after 12, 15 hours of not eating, right? That's common, right?
That, it shouldn't feel that way. You should feel great eating. And and so we actually have a lot of our patients who say, I didn't know it didn't have to hurt to eat. And I feel so bad for those people. This particular patient actually also told me he lost 10 pounds. And he was already his normal weight. He didn't have to lose weight. He lost 10 pounds eating the way we teach you how to eat. And he thinks it's all swelling in his abdomen that has gone away. And I'm not surprised. This person actually is very intuitive and very smart. And I am not surprised with the information he gave me because we hear this over and over and over again. And it's when you can get rid of the certain things that might be affecting your body in a bad way that might seemingly seem healthy. Like, for example, eggs for some people are not great. A lot of us can eat them and do just fine. But if we have leaky gut and we're eating eggs, we're probably causing a lot of systemic inflammation without even realizing it. And so this is where, now I also have to say this. Number one, there's feeling good when you don't eat, meaning you have more energy. That's a metabolic health cellular issue. Feeling good when you don't eat, meaning you don't have abdominal pain, that's a gut issue. So I'm not sure which one you and your wife.
Oh, no, I don't think it's
about.
Yeah, neither for us is the pain. It's just we feel more regulated.
Energy.
Our blood sugar feels good. We just feel fine. We're feeling great. Why mess it up by eating something and then having, whatever the symptom might be. It's like, I feel good. I didn't eat for 12, 15 hours. I feel great.
That's right.
When you eat and then it's like, oh, I got a headache, or, oh, I've got indigestion, or, oh, I've got stomach cramps, whatever it might be. And it's never the same because we're all eating different things, right?
Yeah. And that's where what I would argue is that's not normal. And that should never be considered normal. And unfortunately, in this country, we've normalized feeling bad, and it shouldn't be that way at all. So, that's why we created the Feel Good Gut Health course. It's literally a blueprint, and it's only $299. We give it for 20% off. We're always running that special.
Do we have a code for them to use for me?
Yeah, it's Restore 20.
Restore 20 is my code?
That's right.
All right. So if they go to, where do they go to join that club?
So they can go on the website, on the same website, the worldviewvitamins.com. There's a section up on top where you can join. And our next session is, so if you go to the top 3 bars there, there's the courses.
Training and education.
Yep. And Feel Good Gut Health.
Okay. There you go, guys.
And then if you go to get the course, it'll take you to the new landing page.
All right. And then use the code Restore20 and we'll get some credit to help fund the network. Restore20 and you can help support the network. Excellent.
Yes. And the bottom line is, it's kind of interesting. The food pyramid has made such a splash, and I get it. I understand why the food pyramid is such a big deal, because now government-run agencies will have to adhere to these new recommendations, especially schools. So that's great. But from a functional medicine perspective, not much has changed. We're still preaching eat 5 or 6, as many vegetables as you can in a day. I eat anywhere between 3 to 7 cups per day, depending on how many salads I have or how many, if I eat a lot of broccoli at night, it's going to be a large volume of it just because I love vegetables. I grew up eating vegetables. But then we also talk about proteins, how much proteins to eat, what type of proteins are best, watching out for saturated fats in proteins. Those are little misses that the new food pyramid has. They missed the mark in terms of talking about not oversaturating your diet in saturated fats, really being mindful. For example, a piece of lean turkey breast versus a piece of red meat, there's a different amount of saturated fat in both of those. And you want to be careful, especially if you have a family history of heart disease, that you be mindful how much and know how much saturated fat you're getting into your diet, about 2 to 3 servings a day, and increasing your intake of omega-3 fats and monounsaturated fats like avocados and olives and things like that. I think we've talked about that before, and you told me you don't necessarily like avocados.
No,
but
Logan loves them. I hate them. I don't know why anyone would eat them, but that's each his own.
I'll give you a secret with the avocados. If you make smoothies, it will make your smoothie so creamy and delicious. Mm-hmm. So I actually freeze avocado in my freezer, and I'll chop it up into little cubes. So I'll chop up one avocado into 4 pieces and just throw 1 or 2 pieces into my smoothies to add the omega-3, to add the calories, because that's my main meal if I don't have fat from something else in there. And then it also makes it super creamy and good.
All right. Well, you're not convincing me on avocados. But there you go.
Try it and let me know how you feel.
Logan, there you go. You're going to have your avocado smoothies. Hey,
if Melissa wants to do the Feel Good Gut Health course, let me know.
Okay, I will. I still am committed to get my blood tested. If someone could come over here and take my blood. I can't find anyone.
I think we have you set up now. I think we have you set up at LabCorp. So if you find a place at LabCorp, we can get you set up.
I think Logan checked, and I have to go over to 2 counties away. I'm like, when am I going to do this? Right?
LabCorp should be readily available.
To come to me?
No, they're not going to come to you, but I think it's easier if you just go there.
Yeah, 2 counties away.
LabCorp. No. LabCorp should be readily available everywhere. I mean, there should be LabCorps.
All right,
everywhere.
Well, find out where that is, Logan. We got to go there. Okay, I gotta wrap, but here, one quick little thing out of the cabinet meeting with President Trump today. Here is RFK Jr.
To keep it short, so. And the autism that's moving along, really, is that we're doing.
Did he just accuse RFK of having autism? He just said, "Is your autism moving along?" That's what it sounded like. It's like, well, how's your autism doing there, RFK? I think he's referring to the autism study that he wanted moving along. I don't know.
I think that's what he was. I think that's what he was referring to.
Studies, maybe over 100. And we've commissioned now dozens of studies, maybe over 100. And we are going to get those done for you.
Good. All right. Commissioned over 100 studies on finding out autism. That should be very interesting. All right. I got a busy news day as always, but I wanted to get a visit with you squeezed in here. WorldviewVitamins.com. Dr. Basima, WorldviewVitamins.com. Thank you, Doc. By the way, did you get a lot of snow up there where you're at?
We got 9 inches. How about you guys?
We got a lot of ice. I mean, bad. Really bad. You want to see how bad?
Yeah.
You want to see how bad?
Yes.
All right, let me play this for you real quick. Look at this. Look at this. Here we go.
This damage isn't from high winds, it's from ice. A historic late January ice storm coated parts of Tennessee and Mississippi with up to 1 inch of solid ice. That kind of weight snapped thousands of trees, some breaking with sounds people compared to gunshots. Century-old trees, power poles, entire neighborhoods taken out. At the peak, more than 1 million customers lost power. 3 days after the ice storm, refreezing caused truckers to lose traction and abandon their rigs, forcing shutdowns on interstates I-55 and I-22 while crews work to clear stranded vehicles. This historic ice storm continues to bring life to a halt, leaving damage that will take weeks to clear and months to fully recover from.
Yep, and that's what we're in right now.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow, you guys got to just be safe and don't go out unless you absolutely have to.
That's what
seriously.
they're saying. Don't go out unless there's an emergency still.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Basima.
All right. Thanks, Brandon.
Appreciate
Take care.
you.
Have a blessed
You
day.
too. All right, guys, that's our broadcast for tonight. Remember, again, I say it all the time, but it's important. We are a listener-supported network. We need you to support us. Credit card, PayPal, phone, mail, worldviewfoundation.com. That's going to give you all the information on how to support us. Worldviewfoundation.com. I talked to Caleb today, and apparently we're about ready to start mailing out the tax receipts for all your donations to the foundation for 2025. You'll get a receipt on how much you donated with our EIN number for all your paperwork. So thank you for your support. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you to all of you who are supporting us. And again, if you're not and you can afford to, please consider doing so now at worldviewfoundation.com. All right, roll the music. Let's call it a night. Hey, mark your calendar now, won't you, for Friday night, October 23rd, Saturday, October 24th, our 23rd annual National Worldview Weekend held this coming fall in Milwaukee, Wisconsin at the Waukesha Expo Center. We have already reserved the arena, signed the contract, put down a deposit. The building alone will cost us over $2,000, but we're making it free. Put it on your calendar, Friday night, the 23rd of October, Saturday, the 24th. Soon you'll be able to register. It will be free, but you'll have to register. Again, brought to you in part by our foundation. Hey, thanks for watching tonight. May God save America. Take care. Tonight on the Worldview Report, a new investigation raises serious questions about the integrity of America's elections, with analysts warning that fraud and systemic vulnerabilities may be far deeper than most voters have been